Go, Mr. Gary. Let's get our work session started. Maybe it won't be too late for Scott to take us to dinner now. Okay. So roll call.
Chairman Smith?
Here.
Mrs. Black? Here. Mr. Connor?
Aki.
Mr. Daugherty?
Here.
Mr. Groan?
Here.
Mrs. Haddon? Here. Ms. Jones?
Present.
Mr. Keene?
Here.
Mrs. Schaefer?
Here.
Mr. Slater?
Here.
Ms. Thomas?
Present.
Superintendent Dr. Robertson?
Here.
Okay, delegations.
Thank you for your interest in addressing the Hamilton County Board of Education. During your presentation, please address the board as a whole, not individual board members or administrators. Also, please do not present complaints or concerns you have about an individual employee of the school system. If you wish to voice those complaints and concerns, you should contact the central office and ask for a meeting with the superintendent, since the superintendent is responsible for individual employees. Please limit your remarks to 5 minutes. I will tell you when you have 1 minute left. Please state your name, topic, and address, and you may begin when you're ready. We have Kimberly Hayes.
Hello? Okay. I'm not a public speaker, so I just read and you all have copies of my letter. My name is Kimberly Hayes. I live at 5398 Bungalow Circle, Hickson, Tennessee, and I'm in District 3. I am here this afternoon to share a significant concern widely held within our community, including parents, teachers, students, and a multitude of other stakeholders, regarding the need for more consistent and transparent communication. It's crucial that the Board of Education, community members, teachers, staff, and advocates for students with disability are well informed about the decisions and processes that affect the education of these students and the need for more consistent and transparent communication. It's vital that the Board of Education, community members, et cetera, advocate for the students with disabilities are well informed about the decisions and the processes that impact these students' education. I recently discussed several of these concerns with some of the board members, and I was encouraged to speak to you this afternoon. We are all concerned about potential retaliation against those who advocate for students with disabilities, their families, and more importantly, the students they serve. This fear, unfortunately, inhibits open dialogue and partnership, which are essential for providing the best possible support. When individuals feel unsafe voicing concerns or advocating for the necessary accommodations, the quality of education can suffer. Our teachers work directly with the students, and their insights are invaluable. Failing to recognize and utilize their expertise not only impacts their professional satisfaction, but also limits our ability to implement the most effective strategies. I believe that improved and timely communication alongside clear transparency across departments is necessary for open dialogue. Currently, it often feels as though silos exist, hindering interconnected communication. Ensuring a non-retaliatory environment and valuing teacher expertise are essential for the success of all students with disabilities in our district. I hope the board will seriously consider these matters and take steps to foster a more communicative and consider these matters in a supportive atmosphere for everyone involved in exceptional education. It's important that we don't lose sight of the fundamental purpose of our work. Rebuilding trust will take time, dedication, and a genuine commitment to positive relationships. By consistently implementing strategies that promote open communication, address the fear of reprisal, and value teacher input, the Exceptional Education Department can foster a more collaborative and supportive setting. In IEP meetings, there's often the perception that HCDE's initial response is negative before a discussion. Issues such as requests for more data or reviews can discourage parents, advocates, and other team members. While data collection is essential, some teachers report a lack of adequate training, making it challenging to inform appropriate decision-making. I encourage the new board members and relatively new exceptional ed staff and administrators to review the 2 major lawsuits successfully concluded on behalf of special needs students. One involved a young man who was moved to the perception he had hit the wall within the district, intending to place him in a self-contained class instead with his general education peers. My training at George Peabody College for Teachers, up now of Vanderbilt University, provided invaluable insights, and it's inspiring to see the evolution of educational research. One piece of research that has always resonated with me is Project Re-Ed, focusing on the re-education of emotionally disturbed children. Its application at Dawn School demonstrated the power of integrating mental health services into education and teaching effective social interaction skills within a therapeutic environment. This created a more tailored and supportive system. Given the current challenges, I strongly encourage the board and special ed staff and our community to revisit these principles and successes of Project Re-Ed and explore the possibility of recreating a similar effective model within our district. To address these issues, I asked the board and administrators overseeing exceptional education to consider implementing ongoing parent meetings for special education parents and relative administrators, perhaps with some training provided. Additionally, forming a committee of communicators, stakeholders, teachers, and advocates to discuss the current state of special ed in our schools, as suggested in the Chattanooga Times Free Press, could be beneficial. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. That's the only delegate we had. That's the only one.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hayes. So we have a presentation, I think. Are you doing that?
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Ben Coulter. I'm the Director of Project Management for the district, but I've been involved with zoning for most of my 20 plus years here. So just the purpose of this presentation is just to give you a status of kind of where we're at across the district with both our elementary, middle, and high schools, and then just kind of break it down. Yeah, you have some maps. There's 4 maps there. One is elementary, and that should be the top one. You should have one with elementary with housing permits. That shows you the housing permits for the last 5 years. So you can see the small dots, the small blue dots are where you've had smaller amounts of housing permits, and the larger ones are where you've had a lot. And then there's a legend there. You can kind of see the thresholds for the smaller and the larger dots. And that's K through 12. So in each elementary district. So the housing permits represents all the housing permits, not just elementary housing. We couldn't break it down that way anyways. But yes, Gary?
When you talk about housing permits, when we have apartment complexes, how does that compare, or what?
That would still be a permit.
Okay.
Let me check into that though. That's a good question.
All right.
I'll check back into that. I'll get you an answer through email. I'll copy everybody.
Thank you.
Did the sewer lines kind of go with that? The sewer?
I have a sewer line map, but I just included this one because it should encompass the sewer permits plus this is more encompassing.
Okay.
Because you do have ones out in the county where you're on septic. So Opportunity 2030, our commitments: every student learns, every student belongs, every school equipped, every employee valued, every community served. Of course, we fall under every school equipped. So first of all, we want to define capacity. So we're going to be looking at capacity. So capacity, and this is according to MGT. I didn't source it, but this is their definition. Capacity is a decision, not a definition. In other words, a school's capacity depends on how we choose to use that school. More specifically, a school's capacity is the number of students which can be accommodated given the specific educational programs, the class schedules, student-teacher ratios, and the size of the rooms. So this is patterned to what we use it for. I mean, if you can strip it down and just do all classrooms, and you can get rid of a lot of programs that way. But ours is just how it's being used, the program. So we'll start off with elementary capacity. So looking at your chart, and you can see one right over here. You got one with you, but you can see how red it is. So that deep red is over 100%. There's a slightly lighter red that's 90 to 100, and then there's orange that's 80 to 90, and then there's the yellow. We don't have a lot of yellow. So we don't have a lot of capacity across our school district in elementary. And we'll step through this. I'm going to go pretty quickly through these, but I'll stop and pause and let you guys just kind of look at yours. You've got a copy of the presentation as well. But you can see District 1, they're pretty well utilized except at Allen Elementary. Going to District 2. District 2 is fully utilized. District 3, you can see some places. And I'll stop and make a comment that some of the schools like McConnell and Middle Valley and Allen Elementary, these were hot spots of growth as recent as 2007, where they were some of our largest growing areas, and then after the recession it just kind of stopped. So there's no crystal ball here with growth sometimes. Sometimes it just stops for no reason. Elementary capacity, District 4, we have a little bit of capacity at Hardy and a little bit at Brown. There's District 5. And if it's okay, I'm just going to skip through because you guys can see your own districts. I don't want to take up all the time just showing you what's on the screen. But you can see that there's a lot of 100 numbers. There's a lot of 90 numbers. So when we look at it overall, you can see that we have 19,209 K through 5 students. We have 1,859 pre-K students. We have a total of about 21,000 students in our elementary schools. Capacity, so you're going to see that capacity excluding portables. So that's there for a reason, because portables need to be temporary. We'd like to have all of our kids in a brick and mortar type building. It's safer, more secure for security and safety, but also like for weather elements as well. So you can see across the entire district, we only have 518 spaces in our brick and mortar schools, elementary schools. So we're utilized at 97.6%. And I will put out a number. We've always said that we want to be at about 90% is kind of where we want to be at, because you start having to take away stuff and it starts getting overcrowded when you get over 90%. Capacity map, you've got that for middle school, so you can look at that middle school map and you can see that we've got more areas in yellow. There's one. You got one with you. And just going right here is just our districts 1 through 6. You can kind of see we've got some in the 70s, we got a couple in the 40s, and one around 67. So we have some space in our middle schools across the district. Going to districts 7 through 11, we have you have East Hamilton Middle, East Ridge Middle. You have now you got some in the 80s. You got one East Lake Academy in the 97 percentile, using up the whole building. So overall, we're at 65.1% with our middle schools. So we do have some excess capacity there. And I will say, part of this is part of the reason we have some capacity is because we had the merger, and the merger brought two systems together, and so you just didn't have. They just weren't aligned. So you had some excess capacity at your middle and high schools and less at your elementary. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Because we had a merger.
Yeah, during the merger, I mean, you just had two different school systems, so they had two different sets of
30 years
capacity.
ago. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, we've rebuilt some, but we haven't rebuilt our entire inventory of school buildings. Especially at the middle high school level. We haven't really built as many as we have at the elementary. So looking at high school capacity, here we're actually have a little bit more, we're a little bit more full at the high school level. Some of these are middle highs, like Sail Creek is at 90%, Signal Mountain's at 87. And then, you can see 70s, 77. So that's a very comfortable range to be in for a high school. And when you go to the overall, we are at 78.7. So I think the threshold that MGT had was 80 to 95 is a comfortable, what you want to have, the target for your school buildings is to be somewhere between 80 and 95%. Let me know if I'm going too fast. I just don't want to waste anybody's time. Summary, we have elementary, we have 97.6% like we looked at, middle 65.1, and high 78.7. And I do have a note there, we have 98 portable buildings across the district. So that's how you can be over 100%. When we have a school building that's over 100%, they're not crammed into a closet or anything like that. You have a portable building out there, so the kids are still being taken care of. It's just, ideally we don't want to have portable buildings. And I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Sharp and let him kind of give a summary.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, just to summarize Ben's report, we see that in terms of capacity, we do have limited space in our elementary schools across the district. Why do I click here, Ben? No. All right, well, we'll leave it at that. This is going to be a short summary.
We'll fill it with questions.
Yeah, well, that's what I was afraid of. We've had, over the last decade, we've had overall about a 3.1% growth of student enrollment in the district, which is marginal growth. But in some pockets of the district, we've had greater impact where, in District 7, where we've done a couple of reports similar to this with some community meetings here recently, it's more like a 10% growth. So we brought this to you for a couple of reasons. We want to keep it on the front burner, as we, are putting our current facilities plan in place and getting some construction projects started. Those will be, we'll be, all in and have those, breaking ground and buildings going up over the next couple of years. We'll soon start planning for the next building phase. And so we think it's important that as a board, we continue to bring you information periodically to keep this, at the top of your agenda list so we can talk about this during this time as we prepare for the next stages of building plans and building needs in the district. We're fortunate that we've got some opportunities with existing space in our middle and high schools. We feel good about that. But that elementary piece is one we do want to keep a close eye on, because if at some point we do start experiencing a more rapid pace of growth, we'll find ourselves in some of our elementary schools with some needs showing up pretty quickly. So that's our summary. We had a whole list of things. I think I said most of them, Ben. Any questions or comments, or y'all just want to talk about it?
Ms. Jones.
I have a question. Looking at the elementary capacity for the schools in District 5, which we've known this for a while with Barger's situation, and I know when we talked, there's been some discussion, I should say, collectively, talking about with the Brainerd addition and possibly moving Delwood there, that there's a possibility that we can move Barger to Delwood, which would then release some of that compression, right? I guess my question would be, if moving to the Delwood location, do we know how can we find out how, you know, where they'll take us to utilization-wise in space. That's the first question. But then, if we, in moving Delwood to, the Brainerd side, wherever that is, as we look at that, currently Delwood is at 43%, and Brainerd is at 60, I think it's at 69%. So if we were to go with the way it is now, they'd be over capacity going in. So looking at the additions, I should say, or renovations, we as a board, and then of course looking at, talking to the architect and looking at the plans, we're gonna be looking, I would hope as a board, we'd be looking to make sure that when we're doing additions, that we're leaving our space so that we're not at utilization walking in.
Yep.
So I just want to put that out there, because while I know, I see these maps here being, I see this right here, but as I drive through the Brainerd and Eastdale areas, especially Brainerd, North Brainerd, and the Midtown areas more, working in that space now, there are a lot of blighted houses being redone or leveled and being built again. There's some subdivisions coming in there. Right at Boyd, there's a whole situation that's about to be right there. Some townhomes I think are gonna go right there. I know there's possibly a development next to Tucker, which that's senior living, but there's some spaces coming up in that area, and that's just a big concern for me. Is Brainerd, which would always be Brainerd to me, I don't care how many people come through here and do a shift. Midtown, or whatever they trying to develop it to now, the Brainerd area as it continues to grow, because at some point it'll evolve back to Brainerd. And I'm just concerned about the spacing there. And with that, if Barker going to Delwood, Woodmore where it is, as it continues to do the great work that it does, the Delwood Brainerd situation become more of the community piece coming back into that neighborhood. Just what does that look like? You know, because right now people are in other places, but I think just like it's with Tyner, when you build it, they're gonna come. So when you build it, they're gonna come back because they're gonna want the new. They didn't want the old, but they're gonna want the new. And so what does that look like for that?
Those are all good points, things we were actually discussing this afternoon about the Brainerd project specifically. We do want to make sure with the work that we do at Brainerd, with the combination with Delwood, when we do that consolidation, that we're adding additional space for potential growth. So we want to build it above capacity. And build out that school with all of those extras that you need for a larger school, like an additional gymnasium and things like that. And the Delwood side offers us some really interesting possibilities for an elementary school.
The numbers are good, according to this. It's like the capacity's at 667, and right now there's 365 kids
Right.
at Barger.
Right.
So
Yeah, but it's a magnet, and once again, when you build it, it's gonna come. It's a performing arts magnet. So when they get over there and they have everything that they need to truly, because right now they're in a cafeteria, gymnasium, auditorium capacity
That's right.
hodgepodge.
Yeah.
But if they get over there where they actually have those spaces, just once again, like Tyner, they're gonna come. And so that's just the biggest piece. Just I want to make sure that when we're looking at that, when we're exploring the Delwood property for Barger, if we need to look at additions there as well. Just
Yeah.
to make sure that classroom, because right now they don't have a cap at the current space, Jill, they do, I mean, everything is in one space.
Yeah.
So now they're gonna have a gym, they would have a gym.
Multi-purpose rooms.
Right,
Yeah.
and so just what will that look like for that school? Because I want them to have everything they need, considering they walk under puddles and on top of them most days, like today probably, if they had been there.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to add on to Delwood.
Okay.
You've got plenty of capacity, but the extras that you're talking about, you've got an auditorium at Delwood that's actually a great auditorium for performing arts. You have a large, for a middle school, a pretty good-sized gymnasium. And then you have off of the gymnasium, all those, what Delwood's already turned into recording studios built in. And rooms that could be turned into dance. So I think it's perfect from not just the capacity that Ms. Black was speaking to, but what you're speaking of like making sure that if it's going to be a performing arts elementary, that they have those spaces.
Okay.
I think the bigger question there is then what do we do with Barger's current property?
Yeah, which is a question for the next District 5 board member. I just want to make sure that this District 5 board member gets these kids what they need before they leave here. And making sure that I put those things out to the peers that are on this board, because oftentimes we think about where the growth is, but the growth, just like with any other thing, and I always go back to my social work roots, urban and rural social work, they go from suburb to urban, and they're coming back urban now. So just, we can't forget that as we continue to think about suburban.
Ms. Schaefer?
Thank you for doing the presentation. I want the board to know that Robert and Ben have been by my side in 3 meetings, public meetings in District 7. As we've discussed, we have very high growth, and you all know that we've been discussing what are the options from rezoning to the grade band shift to what else is there a possibility. And I just want to commend Robert and Ben for being there. Dr. Robertson, I want to ask why you haven't been there. I want to know why you haven't supported this endeavor.
Really, really good question. I think 2 of those events, remember, were graduation weeks. I was at graduations and asked Robert and Ben, who this is their area, and I believe Shannon, was it 2 of those?
Yeah.
2 of those. So, I mean, that's why.
I haven't felt supported, Dr. Robertson, as a board member, tackling this issue in District 7 by you. We've discussed it from the beginning of me coming onto this board. And I've told you before in private, and we'll say it again, I don't feel supported. I don't feel like you've been leading the charge with me and trying to find an answer. But I have felt very supported by your staff, Robert and Ben.
I think part of my job is putting really good people around me in positions to support. I've said this multiple times, the expectation that I do all this work on my own is, number one, it's unfair to the great people that I have around me, and it's also unrealistic. So me supporting you is making this team available and her available to work through this. So.
I would just say community members have noticed your absence, and they've noticed who's been there. So again, I want to say thank you to Ben and Robert for being there, for doing the work, for helping answer some really hard questions. We have faced some really upset teachers. We have faced some upset community members who I represent, and they do deserve to know whether their neighborhoods are going to be rezoned or, you know, if we have another answer. So we're trying to answer those questions to the District 7 families. We're trying to watch our numbers. We're trying to watch our growth. We are looking, in District 7, we're watching the 20th day numbers that are going to come in. For some reason, Appison has been, in the staffing model, is showing a decline in enrollment, which we've never had. Westview did the same thing this last year, and we had to hire 2 new teachers on the 20th day because the staffing numbers were wrong. So I'm watching those numbers in Appison to see where they are on the 20th day as to then what we need to do going forward, because we do have at least 600 homes we know coming online in Appison, but that doesn't even account the ones down Idwell Ringgold Road and different places. So we have a big issue in District 7, and I want the board to be aware that we're trying to tackle it. They're not easy conversations with the public, but I want District 7 community to know that we're working on it. We hear you, we're listening, and we're trying to find options where every child in District 7 can stay in a District 7 school.
Thank you. Gary?
Thank you, sir. So it's good we're getting into the Brainerd-Delwood. It might be a good thing to follow with the District 9 situation later in Phase 2 of our MGT. I guess my question as I look at this, I know intermediate schools are making a comeback, but those are grades 5 and 6. I don't know of any, but the 2 maps show that we're high in elementary and low in middle school. What is it called, or is there around the country a group of schools that do 5 through 8?
I mean, you're going to
Because-
see across the country any number of setups, right? I mean, you have a lot of places that do primary at elementary where you do a K through 2 and then a 3 through 5, intermediate. You see some grade bands that are
Right.
4 through 8. I think there's a lot of opportunity.
Oh,
for
there
us.
are some 4 through 8.
Yeah, and I
Okay.
think there's a lot of opportunities for us to consider, do we start looking at some K through 8s? Do we start looking at primaries and then 5 through 8s or 3 through 5? Like, there's a
Right.
lot for us to look at. I think one of the things that wasn't pointed out, what part of the issue comes from the merger, but it also comes from, decisions that we've made at the elementary level and we haven't quite made those at the secondary level. And they're a little bit more complicated and a little bit more controversial, but we have not consolidated any secondary schools, right, where we have consolidated elementary schools, right? And that's just not a popular decision. But I do think, like, when you start to look at, like, for example, in your district, Brown and Central, when we get to a place of, and it's going to come sooner rather than later. I'm not saying it's in the next 5 years,
Right.
next 10 years, it may be in the next 20 years, but when there's a need for a new building there probably needs to be a really hard conversation about, do we turn that into one campus that's a 6 through 12, instead of having under capacity middle and an under capacity high school. But I think the point of this, of what we were talking about earlier as a team, is like, those are the type conversations that we need to start having.
Right. Well, and also as I think about what we're calling phase 2, so we're doing great with our initial schools we're building, and then we're following up. We didn't get it out during the policy meeting. We ran a little late, but we did get it the next $8.5 million for repairs and that on our schools. But then I started then looking on to phase 2 of our build and what the MGT report had said. And some of these elementary schools that are already over 100% aren't in phase 2, which means we've got the phase 2 needs, but we've also got these elementary needs right here. So the logical thing that I saw when we did that was looking at, all right, we've got seats in these middle schools, but we don't have seats in these elementary schools.
Yeah.
So, and we don't have the money to build new elementary schools. We've got to worry about what the MGT report says, and a few of those that are over 100% were not mentioned in the MGT report. So
Yeah, and again, you've got to read that whole report for context, right? And you also have to look at trends. When MGT was coming out in 2020, our biggest concern with elementary schools was actually the urban core.
right.
And that's kind of leveled out, right? I mean, it hasn't gotten to the point now that literally 5 years ago, we were looking for property of where we can build another elementary school downtown, and that's kind of remained steady. Another good example is, 5 years ago with Howard, really go 10 years ago with Howard. Howard had like 600 kids, and then all of a sudden it blew up to 1,600. Well, you've seen that kind of like
Taper off.
slow down and taper off. I think we're at somewhere around 1,450, 1,400. And so some of this is looking at saturation. I think the areas that you don't have saturation right now are the back end of 7. I mean, going out Appleton area, you're going to have continued growth there. You look at 2 on the back end of Signal Mountain and unincorporated area, you're going to continue to see growth there, and so the elementary schools there. I think in District 1, I don't think that's coming in the next 5 to 7 years, but if sewer lines ever get put up, into Soddy Daisy, Cell Creek, then that area is going to see a huge increase. But I think the point that we're trying to make in this is we need to continue to pay attention to it, and we're almost to the point of having all the architects selected for this first, this next phase of these 5 big projects.
Right.
It's not too soon for us to start talking about what is the next, right? And that's not just from a new build perspective, but it is talking about some of the things that you were mentioned, some of the things that Ms. Schaefer's mentioned of do configurations need to be considered outside of what we typically have done.
And then just a concern, we do need to hang on to the Barker property because there's people out there right now that have plans for it, so.
Yeah, I think so, but property to me is one of the biggest decisions we can make. If you look back at some of poor decision, I shouldn't say poor, I don't want to go back, I wasn't there when it happened, but we've made some decisions. Bachman Elementary, where I went to elementary school on the back of Signal Mountain, I think we sold for $1.
And we sold Piney Woods, and we should have kept it, because now look what's going on over there.
Right, and so like, I think that for us to let go of property, it has, like, we really need to think before we do that of, could we ever see, and a good example is CSLA, the old CSLA property, that we get calls all the time about someone trying to buy that piece of
Very
property,
valuable.
but we wouldn't be able to find that much land in East Brainerd, that's affordable, so.
But good that we're doing what we're doing with it because it's also a liability issue.
Oh, exactly.
Mr. Daugherty?
Thank you, Chairman Smith. Mr. Coulter, I appreciate what you've put together, and Dr. Sharp as well. I think having these kind of conversations is important for this board. I will say this is one situation in which I don't envy the county commission, because ultimately they're the ones that have to deal with a lot of the growth across the county. As an example, I know on the 18th, they've got a vote for an amendment through the Home Builders Association, Realtors Association, to increase countryside residential by 50%, which basically means they would then allow up to 3 houses on a single acre. So to put that in perspective, in my backyard up on Signal, District 2, on the back of the mountain, that would potentially result in 5,000 new residents and roughly 2,500 new children in an already pretty strained district in terms of capacity. In a perfect world, I would love to see something, and I'm just throwing this out there, just kind of spitballing, like some type of intergovernment cooperation between county commission, regional planning authority, and the board to be aligned in some of this. I mean, ultimately, we can't control growth. It's an individual's right to develop their land, and that's just part of it. But there is a byproduct to growth, and we're seeing it right here in this data that ultimately lands on the board's lap in terms of responsibility. And it's how you manage that, and it's very expensive to build buildings. So ultimately, it does kind of come back to the county commission because, to get money, you're going to have to take out a bond. And so I hope that, I'm confident they are thinking about it more holistically, because there is a byproduct to it beyond just the schools. There's sewage and roads and transportation. But I guess what I'm saying, just more as a statement, I'm glad we're having these conversations, and I appreciate what you guys did, because it's helpful and healthy to have it, because if we don't, we're going to lose sight of it, and we're going to be behind the 8 ball, and it's not the place you want to be.
Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't know if this is a question for Ben or for Shannon, as I look at the schools in District 8, the elementary schools, we're over 100%. Ben got me a great map that showed all of the high school students and middle school students, elementary students who lived out of District 8, but who were attending District 8 schools. And there could be reasons for that, especially since Eastridge High School, for example, has the only CTE construction, future ready. So, but when you're looking at the elementary schools, we have a significant number of students who are living in the Brainerd area, all the way over to Glass Street, even, that are attending, and that could be for all sorts of reasons. But I don't expect this growth in Eastridge to stop. I expect it to continue, because I'll just say the old guard folks who put their their children through Eastridge schools in the 70s, 80s, and 90s are now, they've either downsized, they've moved, they're in, for whatever reason, the demographic has aged. We have there's been a significant number of homes remodeled. There's probably 600 homes in the last 2 years sold in Eastridge. And it's a very interesting demographic when you have homes as cheap as $100,000 sitting on a postage stamp of land, and then we have $2.5 million homes sitting on 3 or 4 acres of land, all in the same small community. So I don't think we're going to be, for the next foreseeable future, with I don't think anything in the MGT plan except refurbishing. For example, you ought to see the great bathrooms at the high school and the great gymnasium that only costs $72,000. That's, you walk into the gym there and it's like, wow, don't you just want to come play there? Whether it's volleyball, basketball, who cares? But I'm wondering what we're looking at in terms of Eastridge, the elementary schools in Spring Creek and Eastridge Elementary. Of course, Eastridge Elementary being, what, only 6, 7 years old, maybe? And we're already at 110% capacity. That just shows you what's been going on. So it concerns me that we have all this growth, that it doesn't appear like in my district we have a plan for this. Because, yeah, we're at 87% at the middle school, but if these kids that are going to Eastridge schools, these elementary kids are moving into the middle schools, we really kind of have to look at what Ben has provided me sometimes and what Shannon has, at how many we have per grade level and how they are shifting, you know, into the middle school and the high school. And the middle school is going to have more happen over there because of how we've retooled for next school year. We're now going to have like pre-future ready 3 different facility parts for pre-future ready institutes. And so when you throw that in there, when parents start hearing about this, I expect the middle school in the next 2 or 3 years to easily hit 100%. So we're looking at having to have, right now, we've got a plan, 2030, that's great, but we may even have to start looking at a new 5-year plan earlier than we thought. I'd like to encourage that both with you and your staff and with the board.
Remember, just remind the board that Eastridge, if you remember 2 years ago, we were worried about the middle and the high school because they were both 110, 115, and we made the decision to rezone back to the traditional zone for Brainerd that runs all the way south on Moore Road to the interstate, and that went back to Brainerd, and Delwood south of the interstate stayed with Eastridge, and it kind of fixed it. You see it now that it's really helped Eastridge Middle and Eastridge High School. It's helped Brainerd and Delwood. What's interesting about Eastridge Elementary is, and this is like, these are the hard decisions. We've got 124 kids in pre-K, right? If we didn't have those 124 pre-K sites, we would be under capacity. And so I think there's also a long-term consideration about working with partners on pre-Ks. Do we look at more consolidated sites of pre-K through 2 or whatever that is? But we've got more capacity there if we chose to relocate some of those pre-K sites.
Well, I agree. That's
Yeah.
what we need to start talking about.
Obviously, this is a topic of great interest that we could go on for hours. I've got a couple more lights. I'm gonna give everybody we can really get bogged down here, but, just a lot of stuff that we gotta look at, a lot of stuff. Ms. Jackie?
Thank you. First of all, I appreciate the fact that Jody's looking ahead for her district, knowing that it's growing, and that you all have done this great capacity study to show us where we are, and that we need to plan for future growth out that area. But I also want you to remember, when I'm coming back again to Orchard Knob Middle School, who was built in 1961, they're 64 years old, that currently has a gymnasium that was built in 1995 that has an infestation of termites, and the air conditioning unit is not working. So before we can consider it, but before we do all this new building based on new growth, I want to make sure that the children that are in Orchard Knob Middle School, it is in my district, it gets the things that it needs, or rebuilt. I know everybody keep pushing me back saying about this study you all gonna do if they need a new roof or if they need to build a new school. Well, I'm saying it needs to be a new school. There's so much going on. I just want to say that, and I know there's gonna be future growth, and East Brainerd continue to be their future growth. But we also have schools that need services, and before we talk about building brand new schools or expanding other schools, we need to make sure we're fixing the current schools. And I know this school in my district needs some fixing. And so I just wanted to state that for the record for everybody. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Felice?
Yeah, one question I have is the Tyner Middle High, it's listed under K-12, and I may have missed something, but are we considering putting, so it's really just going to say middle high? Okay, because
It's,
I
that
just
column
like-
is saying those are all the K-12 students. So if you look at that column, it's the same for all of them, just making sure that we're distinguishing between not a pre-K student, but they're in K-12.
okay. And then, Bessie Shepherd, they're kind of in trouble at 115%, with fever 113. Like my district is in trouble, I think, in Ottawa. Ottawa Elementary is the only new school, and we've got 860 students there and 92%, and it's one of the highest growth as far as housing permits going up that way, north of Mayhang or north of, Ottawa, the Ottawa exit mainly, but all the way up north. And our high school and middle school were both built in around 1970. And as far as competition, a lot of people who can afford it, the facilities, some of the facilities are not, acceptable to them, and a lot of people are going to private school. I know we're doing what we can. I just know we're behind and we have a lot of needs, and that's one reason why I am a stickler about the budget, because I know, the county can't just pay for education. They got to pay for roads, and we've got to help pay for new facilities. But anyway, that's where I stand.
Ms. Black?
I just want to remind my fellow board members and some folks here, while permits are a really great indicator of growth for new housing, it doesn't necessarily reflect all of the growth that communities experience, right? In certain communities, due to the cost of housing, multiple families do live together. I think that's where a lot of the growth has come from that isn't indicated on this map for Eastridge and Eastside, Eastlake. You have a large community where you have multiple families living under one roof and in one home. And so while these are good indicators of growth, we have to, actually school enrollment is the best indicator of growth. I think that's where a lot of, like, we may have gotten caught up 5 years ago or so before we started seeing a lot of community members move in and using multiple families in one house. It doesn't necessarily, like, the new permits didn't necessarily reflect all of the growth that was happening. And so it's a conversation that we need to keep an open mind about, because you see, like, if you look at the map, there's a tiny dot at Clifton Hills, and there's a tiny dot at East Lake, and there's a tiny dot at Easter Edge. But if you look at enrollment, you can tell that those communities are growing as far as the number of people that are living in the houses that are there. And so it's I want everybody to just kind of keep that in mind when we're having these conversations, that if you look at places like Eastside Elementary and Battle Academy, you have a much larger dot, but those are places that already house communities that have multiple families in under one roof. And so this is in addition to what's not reflected in the way that regional planning often counts growth. So I just want to lay that out there and make sure that everybody keeps that in mind. I'll continue to advocate for my community. I've always been a strong proponent of, when we have all of these extra permits for housing development, I would love to see there be some sort of fee at closing that the developers pay, because that can be split between the county for roads and sewer and us for schools, because we've got all of these growth and the developers will make money whether or not we charge them $10,000 on their closing fee, but it would help us educate these kids and maintain sewers and do all of those things. They're still going to make their money, I promise. So I just want to throw that out there for those future conversations. Like Mr. Doherty, these are things that we have to talk about with our peers at the county commission, and have these conversations and make sure that we're doing right by the people in our community and able to accommodate and welcome people who want to live here. So, yeah.
Mr. Carter?
Thank you, Chair. So I was going to ask for an adjustment in the way that the information is delineated on here, and Felice highlighted exactly why I would be asking. It's a little bit confusing that at the end we've got CSLA, CSAS, and different things that are K-12s with all of their students listed, but then we don't see them in the elementary or middle. Similarly with Normal Park. So just for instance, Normal Park is listed only in the elementary, but it says their full complement of students of 866 that goes all the way to the middle school. If you were to take those two and separate them, the elementary school is absolutely going to be a lot closer to 100% capacity, and the middle is going to be a lot lower because of the loss of students there. And something that in our own facilities plan we've addressed, need for more magnet seats to be able to, talking about expanding Normal Park, to be able to offer further. Similarly, I think CSAS and CSLA are really important conversation pieces there, because that's part of our plan, is to expand magnet seats so we take pressure off of some of these other schools throughout our community. So I think that it could be really helpful if we were able to get that part of the information and break it down so that those schools aren't just lumped into the high school. So thank you. Not attacking, just think it would be a really great thing to see.
Mr. Groen?
Some of the comments that have just been made, I believe I'll just say are short on history. And being a history teacher, we have to go back 20 years or so when Volkswagen first announced that they were moving their plant here. Chattanooga was in a housing shortage then. Just because of changing economics and demographics in the entire United States and the auto industry, everything that was going on in there, 20 years ago, 25 years ago. And there are people in the room here, Dr. Varner, you've been here and seen all this. So we've always had a housing shortage. And then when you throw EPA regulations on top of it, that the city and the county, the city of Chattanooga and Hamilton County were trying to deal with as they were experiencing this growth, so these conversations about growth, that there were 6 school board members at the county commission meeting yesterday, a 4-hour meeting, and the vast majority of the time, I would say, 3 hours and 45 minutes was all spent on growth. So we've got population growth, we've got housing shortages. The EPA regulations alone, back 10, 15 years ago, were adding anywhere from $25,000 to $40,000 to each and every home that was passed on to the buyer by the developer. If we say we want to charge an extra $10,000 or $5,000 for every closing for educational impact, again, that's going to be passed on to the buyer by the seller. It's not going to impact the seller, it's going to impact the buyer. All that does is drive up the cost of housing, which makes the entire cost of living in this area even more exacerbated. So it's not that simple. And our school district and our county and the major city, Chattanooga, we've all been dealing with this issue and trying to handle everything that's involved with how do you handle the infrastructure. And schools are part of the infrastructure, for sure. We've got to do a better job and in concert with the county commission also. But I don't think we can ignore the city of Chattanooga either.
Felice, your light is still on. Okay. Okay, thank you guys for getting this information to us. It's definitely a conversation we got to continue to have. Yesterday, some of the comments with the county commission, we talked about working together. This is absolutely a place we got to work together, I would think. And maybe we give some thought to how we approach that body and see if we can get a seat at the table. And because it's very important conversations. Thank you, you guys, for communicating this to us. Okay, takes us to committee chair updates. Let me start to my far left over there. Mr. Connor?
Yeah, so I actually am excited. I have some decently good news. It sounds like I'm going to get off the wait list to be on the earlier version of the TSBA Summer Law Institute. And Shannon and I spoke yesterday. As soon as that meeting occurs, that's the big one. That's the one where everything that's been signed goes through, explains, yada, yada. And as soon as that's held, we will digest the information and present it to the board. I'll announce a meeting. Assuming that they announce that I'm off the wait list, I'll go ahead and then schedule the meeting. The only thing I do want to say, because it was brought up to me, I do want to make sure that there are no laws that were passed that we are outside of policy on. So, for instance, there was a cell phone law that we're going to talk about tonight that was passed. Our current policy is within that law. So I want to be clear that although I'm waiting to make sure I get all the information to present to you all, there is nothing time sensitive that I have missed that we haven't talked about. So,
Okay. Okay, thank you. Ms. Schaefer, policy?
There were a few things that we talked about the policy committee that we needed to revise our policies. So,
but we're not done yet. Like, we're not bad. They have time. Yeah.
So-
All of them have timestamps, right?
but
Am I missing something? I would love to know if I am.
Everything that I'm aware of that is time sensitive has a start of the school year action date.
Okay.
We have time to talk about it tonight and in July.
Okay.
Now, candidly, Mary and I continue to go through and digest because it's not simply what is in the blurb, it's what's actually incorporated into the public chapter, and sometimes it's what the state board or the state department bake into their rule. So there are actually 3 places that we have to be looking. We're looking at all of that.
Shannon, our next policy meeting is,
We have it on September 9th, which means the first reads for that next one go in the August meeting. And that will be on school board operations. So it's that section 1 that we're looking at those. Sorry. Give me you.
Thank you.
Mr. Daugherty, Finance.
Yep, thank you, Chairman. No major updates other than I wanted to just express my position of gratitude to Mary Ellen and Dr. Robertson for their participation in the recent budget hearing with the County Commission. And I also, I know I already said this too in our group chat as the board, but publicly I just wanted to also thank Chairman Smith for his part in participating in those conversations and what I felt just did an incredible job. If anybody hasn't listened to it, what he said, I'd encourage you to re-listen to it because he did a great job of kind of capturing the difficult and rewarding work that we do as a board. So I just wanted to thank you, Joe, for what you did and representing the board very well in that moment.
Mr. King.
Yep. So, ABM's off to a good running start. Mr. Sharp and Mr. Coulter have been working with them. Core America, if you remember, we hired them to help. They have done a walkthrough inspection of 14 different schools to set up kind of a baseline of needs and, what would you call it, needs and expectations for ABM. ABM is having just a little, just a snag right now in hiring the number of people, which they're coming along, but their goal is 300 plus, and they're in the 200s right now. But again, they've got a good supply system and stuff already out to the schools and that. And the ones they're working a little extra to fill in the gaps. The other thing about the facility committee, we are going to be talking about the $8.5 million tonight. The county commission already gave the go-ahead on that yesterday in their meeting. So as long as we pass what we've got as far as our phase 2 of the different things for capital projects, then they've already agreed to vote that in also, and they'll do that next Wednesday. We don't have a June, July meeting. We're looking at probably August when we'll have our next facility meeting.
Okay. And we're going to be voting on that list a little bit later on. Okay. Mr. Drone, Transportation.
No report at this time.
Nothing to report. Okay, good. Takes us now to some discussion items. Student success planning. I'm not sure who, I don't remember.
It's me.
Okay.
It's me.
Thank you.
And I have to look on my phone. Student success planning is listed on the website, and I knew nothing about it, but people across the district, mainly maybe counselors, social workers, and maybe a few principals mentioned. Some of the premise might be good or helpful, but one of the main complaints is that the student success planning is actually asking social workers, counselors, and teachers to input a lot of data on every single student into a system. And I think it's with student success planning, but it's Tennessee Pulse, right?
It's built off of that platform, yeah.
It's
built off of that, yeah.
That platform. And so it's not the regular platform that they usually use in their roles like Power School. That's what they usually, so one thing I heard is it's cumbersome for them to go in and out of the student success planning platform. And it's just creating a lot of extra work, and they're sounded exasperated. What they want is an individualized plan for every child, and a plan is created by a counselor or social worker. This is from our website. And it's not a bad idea, but it's extremely time-consuming. But what they want to do is assess this child's strengths and needs across 4 domains. academic, family, health, social, emotional, behavioral, and then work with families to match the into and out of school services and needs as well. And that's one thing I did mention at the meeting. I feel like, you know, that's a lot of out of school things, and that it seems like we need to focus on education, and if they need to be referred to, you know, an outside entity or something, you know, I'm not saying don't provide the services, but social workers in particularly have expressed concern with possibly losing their licenses because they are asked to input data on each student, their academic, but their family situations, their health, their social and emotional well-being, and like for social workers, what have they done to them? Do they give them a care basket? What kind of things that they do? And some of this just is private, and they don't feel comfortable putting it into a site that's a Tennessee site, but it's, well, that's what I was told, that this one person, female I guess, knew for sure that other people were looking at it who would normally not have access to this kind of data. And I know others, and I can see, you know, if we're needing to help people, but they're being asked repeatedly to enter a lot of data. So the process alone is what's really exasperating quite a few of our people, and they're asked to do this, I guess, in every school. But I think quite a few people would feel like it's intrusive as well to collect all of this data, you know, on your student that's not just academic. And, you know, in Power School, I think there's probably places where they can make notes about things, because I use Power School as a teacher myself.
Yeah, I mean, how would you like me to respond?
We'll see if there's anything else I have to say about
Sure.
that. But, yeah, well, what data are they collecting? I mean, I haven't used it myself. I've been told this information. I haven't actually looked at it. But the process itself is very time-consuming and cumbersome.
Okay.
But also concerns about the privacy. And if a lot of families knew we were collecting all this data, they might want to opt out, because I don't know if I'd want them collecting all this emotional and health and family data and putting it into a system.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think, if you don't mind, just being able to succinctly say what SSP,
Okay.
Student Success Planning, sorry, you might hear me
No,
do
that's okay.
edu
SSP is
jargon, sorry. So we think about student success planning, it's a way to kind of really be able to understand our students, right? We talk about knowing our students and being able to best support them each individually. And so it's not a platform, right? We often get caught up in like how we're doing something as a platform, but actually it's just a way of really kind of systematically making sure we know every student in our building. And so we actually have this through the Strategic Project Initiative. So we're coming together, we're bringing it in front of different leaders to make sure that the direction of this is moving appropriately. So we're really kind of honing in on what it is we're doing with student success planning. So for that reason, the reason I tell you that is we have a clear theory of action of where we're going, and it's built around this opportunity by design, right? You don't just get there without having a clear design to get to a place of really systematically knowing your kids. So that, I don't want to misspeak it, but our theory of action on this is that if we know our students, if we identify both their strengths and their areas of need, right? If we co-create plans with our community, with parents, right? If we connect students and if we champion those plans, then we'll be creating those opportunity by design for every student. So I am happy to speak about my daughter who had like a medical need this year, right? It's one of the, I think, greatest ways to enter into this, right? She had a way that she was actually experiencing vomiting that we didn't know about, right? And so we were able to kind of collectively think about what is it that we know about her? What are the pieces that we can put in place to support her, right? And where can we connect if we need to as we figure this out so that she has the best, she is known in her school and they understand like the anxiety that's causing this vomiting and why she would be gone, right? So my personal experience as a mother that I'm sharing with you all is one of what we do here, right? What we're really trying to do is figure out how do we mark what we know about kids so we don't start new every year with every teacher, right? And we can really extend that into how do we connect students into the things that help them grow, the baseball games, the volleyball pieces, right? And how do we leverage that alongside with families and parents to get to where we're designing an education for every student, right? So the questions aren't secret. They're actually, when a parent goes onto their Power School portal, if your school is doing success planning, you can get to the questions that are part of that parent assessment piece, and just figuring out what the parent wants to share with us about the needs of their child, right? It's all there. And then the conversations are kind of happening. We're trying to systematize that across teachers, across people in the building that know students, and be able to put it in one place. I will be the first to tell you, yes, the platform is absolutely cumbersome, right? We're custom designing this platform. It's my love and my hate at the same time. It's built off of the same, the Tennessee platform so that we can reduce cost on that. But like where every button is, where everything to do, we're custom designing, which is difficult, right? And so there are certainly growing pains with it. I think we're getting better and better. We're also running out of like grant funding to do those things. Like that is a very different space that we're in now. And so we're trying to figure out exactly what we finish polishing so that we can continue to make this useful. There's a lot I could say about that. I tried to condense it, but I hope that gives an overview of what student success planning is.
Yes, an overview. And I know it's linked to the Harvard Ed Design program, and they list some of the things on Harvard.
Sure. Yeah, it's an idea that can come that is championed by Harvard. It's larger than Harvard, but it is an idea that's championed.
And I think we're the only school in the Southeast that's using it.
No, I think there's other Tennessee districts as well. Yeah, we are designing our own platform that's unique for Hamilton County. We're not using something like pre-made or anything, so we are the only ones using ours. It's custom designed for us.
And also, is it funded by the Smart Venture Fund for Smart Cities Venture Fund? I think that says that on our school website.
I'd have to look that up for you. I'm not 100%.
Smart City Venture Fund is part of Chattanooga 2.0. It's one of the funding sources. So it's a local group that came together that started funding projects in Hamilton County schools in 2016, I believe.
Yeah, on the school website, it does say Smart City Venture.
Yeah.
So is it hooked in with the Smart Cities goals for the city of Chattanooga?
No.
Is it
it's
related?
It's like groups like Benwood and McClellan that founders came together, and again, this started in 2015 or so, so I don't want to misspeak, but they put money together to basically fund projects in schools, so it's local funding that's supporting projects.
Okay. And I would say I'm very happy, you know, it was helpful to your daughter. I don't want to undermine that. But I do think it's very cumbersome, and I'm wondering how much time it's taking, how many more personnel we need to implement this. So where in the budget is this student success planning? I didn't see it anywhere in the budget. Where is it listed?
So the development of the platform, we've been able to utilize different grant funding and make sure that's not like budget funding. I think we do have a line item in the budget that helps us pay for the platform, like
Is
the
it
base
under software
platform.
or what?
It would be under software, and I, off the top of my head, can't remember which line item, but we can get that to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that answers my questions.
Thank you.
Ms.
Always
Jones.
happy to talk more.
Ms. Jones.
I honestly don't know where to start, but as a licensed social worker by the state of Tennessee, and I have been since 2005, literally just paid my relicensure fee the other day. as a master's level social worker by education. I have an MSW, and I am an LMSW by the state of Tennessee. In the 2 years and 62 credit hours that it took me to obtain my MSW, never at any time as a social worker, 20 years out, would I state that I feel uncomfortable obtaining information that would be in a psychosocial assessment. That's what you do as a social worker. You take psychosocial assessments. You take psychosocial assessments that include information, demographics, your family history, family health history, physical and mental health, where you've lived, your education, behaviors. I mean, that's what you do. That's why I pay Sally Mae back alone every month, because I was trained to case manage, and in case management, that's what you do. I left Alabama A&M University. I've worked for community mental health centers. I've worked for Moccasin Bend. I've worked for hospice. I've worked in hospitals, Erlanger Health System, which serves indigent care and for-pay care. I have never fixed my mouth to tell any one of my bosses that it is against my ethical code as a social worker to do a psychosocial assessment. That is what we do. That's what we do. And so I'm very concerned about the social worker who is uncomfortable being a social worker, because if you're familiar with SSP, and it is, like Shannon said, homegrown, because they're creating they're building the platform here, and they've been building it for a while here. And professionally in my other life, we've had some conversations about, Rachel's here, she's had this conversation, we've had some tough conversations because I struggle with us building our own, because once again, I'm like, if there's a body of work and a software and a platform, let's just use it. But I understand and support what they're trying to do. But the SSP program, in general layman's, based off of what I'm hearing you say you received information on, I think whoever told you this has done you a disservice and miseducated you. And I say that because if you ever take the time, and get the time, not ever take time, when you get the time, because I know you'll do this, when you get the time, when school starts back, to go in and sit in an SSP meeting, you be able to see how SSP works. And there is a component for the teacher, there's a component for the family, there's a component for the social worker, there's a component for the counselor, there's a component for the truancy officer, there's a component for the principal, there's a component for the community forward coordinator that's in that school. And so there's a body of work, so there are various people putting in things, and if they feel like it's a violation of privacy rights for the social worker to know the same thing as the guidance counselor, they probably know it anyway when they get in the room and talk about it. The teacher's gonna actually know more than all of them, because the teacher's in there with them all the time, and you know that as a teacher. So, but I'm very conflicted by whomever feels this way, and I want to say this from the dais. If there is someone who's employed by Hamilton County Schools that is a part of an SSP team, and you feel this way, please reach out to your leadership and have a conversation, because you may not need to be on that team. Because this is not, I mean, exceptional ed becomes a part of SSP at times, behavior specialists become a part of SSP at times, the center, Avondale Center Recreation Directors sometimes become a part of it because they're in Boys and Girls Club. There's all these things, and when they refer out, once they refer it out, once they push that referral out, it's gone forever. They no longer have to pick it up. Somebody at the Boys and Girls Club is doing that, or Girls Inc. is doing that, or the church is doing that, or Justice Mom at the snack pack is doing that. Somebody else is picking up where we can't fulfill. And so I just want to share that, because I hate that whoever that feels this way has projected this onto you, because this is a very valuable process. I just think that people need to educate themselves on it, and where there are concerns, yes, there should be concerns. I would support more, and I get, and then I'm gonna be quiet because I know you gotta go and I gotta go too, because I'm just tired. But we talk about this opting in and opting out. I say you opt out, not opt in. You opt out because there's what I've experienced here is there are more people that want to opt out. I mean, there are less people that want to opt out than people that want to opt. Everybody wants to opt in. A lot of people want to know what's going on. We're losing children every day for a variety of reasons because they hear adults say we shouldn't talk about these things. And they want to talk about them with the people that they feel safe to talk about them with. And if you're an adult in their life that you don't feel comfortable in having those conversations, then I strongly feel like you have the ability to advocate for yourself to be removed from that space and empower someone else who is capable of taking on that lead for you to do that. But whomever, if you feel this way, please do not mislead and miseducate people that make decisions here on this dais. Like, that's unfair. I just think that's unfair. That's really bothering me.
I really didn't want to interrupt, but the problem is not them helping and collecting the information. It's the privacy issue, and they didn't feel comfortable with the platform and being guaranteed that it was private. And I heard that from more than one person out there who had the same concerns. And the other issue, I mean, I think every parent should have a sheet and be able to opt in or opt out and be aware of all the data that's being collected. Because if they're, a very successful student with no problem, if they have problems, they go to the counselors and then let them collect at the counselors. But I don't know that we need to collect it on every single student and put our employees through that process of clicking a lot of buttons and doing a lot of work on students who don't need help.
I would say let's make sure you see the process. And maybe we can.
Well, I have heard from multiple people across the district who are really not happy with all the extra work it's creating. But I really would like the opportunity to go to a meeting, but I don't know that we should blanket apply it to every single student in our system.
Ms. Schaefer, and then you be you, Ms. Schaefer.
Okay.
Are you collecting data on every student?
Oh, Schaefer.
It's a platform where we're putting in collected information.
Because on my Power School, under forms for parents that are looking for it, you go under your forms, it's down at the bottom. Mine says not started. So are you collecting data on my child that I haven't consented for you to collect?
We don't, if you haven't submitted the data, then we don't have any data collected
So
from you about your
that's
child.
the process I want to know. Where are you getting parental consent to begin collecting the data?
Right.
How is that, how are you getting that opt-in? Because under law, you need an opt-in.
Yeah, I almost will probably defer this to Scott Bennett. It is educational data that we're collecting. We're not collecting anything new outside of what's already happening in the school system. We're
It says
systematizing
social,
the data.
emotional, family, help.
We're not asking any new, we're not sending, we fully understand the laws. We're not sending any questionnaire or survey, right? We are putting into one place data that we know from students and from teachers about a child. Like, what I would ask for y'all, you're asking me a lot of questions without seeing it. Why don't we pull, like, I have permission to pull up my own child, right? And we can look through exactly what's in there. I think you believe it's something that it's not. And so, like, we are not collecting any new data.
Mr. Bennett, where the parental consent's coming from.
In anticipating this question, I'm looking through the Family Rights and Responsibilities Law, and I want to be careful that I don't give an answer out of ignorance because I don't exactly know how the process works. But if we're providing psychological or counseling services, we have to get consent. Looking at what's on the website, and I confess, I don't know enough about this program. I'm speaking from ignorance.
Sure, then I can, sorry, I didn't mean to defer it to something that you're not familiar with. I would say
Well,
the best way to say it.
Let me give the parameters, and then you fill in the if we are doing psychological services for a child, counseling services for a child as defined by the Rights and Responsibilities Act, then yes, we absolutely have to get consent. What I think I'm hearing is that the data collection is academic in nature, and what I don't know is where that boundary is practically? I simply don't know, so I have to defer to Shannon on that one.
A good way to say it is it's a place to house information, right, in one common place. We're not generating new information on students. We're not doing anything outside the purview of that law.
But if
We're
you're
housing
collecting data or information from a student inside the classroom and collecting it and storing it on a platform without parental consent, we have problems. So I need to see that. Scott needs to see that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I'll make myself available to work with you, and I believe Dr. Russell's team is probably elbow deep in this.
Not a problem.
Mary's more familiar with this than I am, but we both are ignorant about the nuts and bolts.
Sure.
So we'll be happy to provide any guidance, and before the start of the school year, if we need to add an extra layer of consent, we will. Right now, I'm not prepared to say one way or the other.
Is it my turn?
It's your turn, Ms.
Okay,
Jackie.
thank you. Okay. I am familiar with SSP through my other job capacity, and I am a social worker as well. You do have some people that complain about entering in the data. I myself have some issues with SSP, and in layman terms, for me, it was difficult for me to understand, like you all are kind of confused about understanding. So the way I understood it, I had to relate it to what I did in my other capacities. And Jody, for you, you would be familiar with DCS when they did treatment team meetings. When they would when they had a child, what they do is review all areas and needs of a child. They ask the parents some questions that's on a survey if they go to the SSP and answer those questions. They ask the teacher through their observation or maybe a conversation they may have had a student about there's a set of questions too, basic questions that they may ask. And then that social worker is in there as well to determine from a social worker's perspective, not from a social worker's counselor's perspective, okay? That's different. Because we serve social workers, master level social workers serve as social workers, and they can also serve as therapists, counselors. So in that capacity, in that meeting, they're serving as the social worker. Because you may very well have a counselor in that same meeting. It's called a care team, is what they're generally called. But from our language, it would be a treatment team meeting where everybody in mental health, that's what they call it. Everybody sits down and discuss a child that everybody in that school is going to be discussed to make sure if there are any needs we need to, how is this team going to get those needs addressed? If they come in and it sees that a child may need eyeglasses, right? Then they're going to say, what resource can we give this child for them to get their eyeglasses, right? And there's going to be a list and follow through to make sure a child gets what they need based on that. Now, for me, I look at it from all the different aspects as a social worker, social service, mental health, and all those areas that I've worked for. A lot of times for me, children can fall through the cracks, and I've expressed this to them. They can fall through the cracks because the reality of it is teachers don't have time to always go in and just, sometimes they may just go click. You know, whether that's good or bad, I'm just saying that's what they may do. A parent sometimes may not disclose to you what's truly going on and happening in that house, right? And a child most definitely is not going to come and tell you what's going on in that house if the parent has said, don't talk about our business. So what it's doing is really gathering the information based on what a child may need to help them improve, whether that's academically, whether that's emotionally, or wherever. But ethically, when they're discussing that, there's nothing like, this child has came in, and as a social worker, I'm talking to you about something confidential that you have disclosed to me from a counselor's perspective. Not that you turn them on and off, but they're not meeting one-on-one. If they are, then they shouldn't be. That may come into ethical things because you can't disclose what a child has taught you. That's ethically, even though they may require them to. I don't know. I'm not there, but it is more of what I call a treatment team meeting where you gather and see how's this child doing academically, whatever, that we can help them improve on things that they need. That's the easiest way for me to explain it. Now, you all can correct me if you want to, but I always have a problem with them to kind of create their own, because sometimes they create their own, they leave out a part. And sometimes those are missing parts that are very much important in the lives of families. So, but that's kind of what it is from that capacity. But I have heard people say it's just a lot, I don't have time to do it. I mean, I've heard teachers say that, and it is. But it can be, for me, it can be a very good tool with some tweaks to it from the perspective it helps you know how you should proceed with a child, what needs are there, that you may have those resources to provide to that family to make the family holistically work. And it's just a discussion among those people pretty much that base model people to see if this child is misbehaving in school, can this behavior look, what can you do? Those people in that room are the people that really service the child within the school majority of the time. So since they know about the child and the services, they see things and they can discuss it and say, I see that I'm having this problem with the child. It's like I had, just an example, a family that was a DV family. Everybody on that team knew it was a DV family because the mom disclosed it or whatever, so they had to gather their resources on how can we help this family, make sure these children are at school, and also make the teacher understand that these kids may come to school upset sometime because of what's going on in the home. So it has a lot of aspects to it, but it has a lot of good aspects where you have a team of people working with children and families to try to improve their lives throughout in all areas.
Thank you, Jackie. I appreciate that, and I think that's useful, and you know, especially if you have an IEP team, or for children who are troubled and have seen the school counselor or social worker. You know, some of them might really need that team, but you know, understand where the schools are being required to collect data on every single student. So, but I still think it needs to be an opt-in kind of thing.
Mr. Chairman, let me comment if I could real fast. So checking the website and looking at both the public chapter from last year, but also the changes to state law and public chapter 347, I feel pretty confident that we're operating within the law. I'll double check and I'll get back with the board. But number one, FERPA already protects the collection of educational data. And one thing that's clear from the website and from what I heard Ms. Moody say is that you've got school officials with an educational need to know collecting FERPA-based data. And so wherever it's stored is protected by FERPA. So I'm comfortable with that. On the next layer, how it's used, I understand from other conversations I've had with Dr. Russell and that Mary's had with Dr. Russell, that before our team takes the next step and offers counseling services to any student, we get consent. And so that, as applied to this, would cover us. But, and here's a change in the law that I wanted to call your attention to. This is in Public Chapter 347. It is an amendment to the Family Rights and Responsibilities Act, which, as we discussed last year, was probably broader than the General Assembly actually intended. But the General Assembly has provided that the requirements for parental consent do not apply when, and I'm skipping through a bunch of sections, when a school counselor or school psychologist licensed by the State Board of Education pursuant to Title 49, who provides preventative and developmental counseling pursuant to, and there's a specific code section. So I feel pretty confident that we're operating within the law. I will double check and I will report back, but I didn't want us to end this conversation with a big old question mark. And that law will be part of the update that Mary and I get out, hopefully within the next week or two.
And just, you know, just one final comment. The biggest complaint is because it's taking data on every single student, all these employees, it's taking a whole lot of extra time for them, and they are exasperated, and that's the main thing I'm getting at from them.
Okay, thank you. Suspension of certified employees. I'm not sure who had asked for that.
Well, maybe more than one of us.
Okay. So who would you, like, you want to speak to
Well,
that?
yeah,
Okay, go
I'm
ahead.
looking at something that someone from TEA, Tennessee Education Association, reached out to me before I had a chance to even write it down or print it off or talk to the person, but I will give you, let's see what they gave, sorry. one
It's
second.
probably what I'm gonna share.
From that person who reached out to you?
Well, it's something that I've been looking at. And he's-
Okay, well, you go ahead
he's been-
first. I have it
So-
pulled up, but, yeah.
So the concern that we had after the last meeting, and Dr. Robertson, you weren't here, was when we heard that a teacher that was suspended, there were opportunities, not the right word, but there were possibilities that that teacher could lose their health insurance, depending on how long. First, they're being suspended without pay, which it was said that it's easier to do the suspension without pay and reimburse and pay them the difference in that, which I understand that part, but there's different systems do different things. So checking, after that, we checked a little bit, so, and I'll share some of that information, but, so we're one of 3 out of the 6 main counties that do suspend without pay, and then 3 others that suspend with pay. So Nashville, Knoxville suspend with pay. Clarksville, Montgomery suspend without pay, but they, if they can place them in an alternative work placement, then they suspend with pay. But so there was discussion there that we had, but the thing that resonated with me that keeps coming back is the chance of losing your health insurance on something that, and I hate saying it's always been that way. Teachers, and because we have to protect the children, and there's all different reasons for suspensions. It might be a suspension for, I'll share, I had a teacher tardy to school 54 times in one school year, and finally was suspended without pay for a day. So, but, then we're talking about situations such as right now that's been in the news and stuff, and a teacher suspended without pay. We have to sometimes, hate to say that, but we have to look at it as, all right, we're going to suspend them without pay to protect children around them. But, we have not allowed the fact that after 60 days, because of the contract with insurance companies, they're not getting paid, their insurance payments aren't getting paid, and now they lose their health insurance. And they can't get that health insurance back, even if they're reinstated a lot of times, because if they're dropped the enrollment time, and I'm just going by what a few have sent me information on that had lost health insurance. So
Before you get, can I just correct 2 things,
Okay.
because these are big things. Number one, they're not losing health insurance. And I don't want to dismiss like the concern, because I think that's a part that we talk about. They go to COBRA, right? Which I understand, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
My
They
They have
wife's
to
a very-
purchase, they have to
go through
purchase their own through
Right.
COBRA.
That's the nature of
Right.
Yeah, they had to purchase it. to get-
But
That's, but I want to, the other one, that it is not true that when they come back, they haven't got, that's not accurate.
Well, it was true if the individuals that were telling me that were being honest, then
Well, then
they
we
could
would love
not
to talk
get
to them
their,
specifically.
they could not get their previous Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance back until the following enrollment period. So again, but I guess the concern I've got, I understand after talking with Mary and Scott, it's, you don't, on something that's going to be a long-term possible suspension, you don't suspend with pay. I don't know if it's easy to just say we're going to suspend without pay, and then if they're out for a day, we reimburse them. I understand that. the part that, you know, gets to me is that we discussed this, a few of us, we need to have an option in there for them to pay their premiums with the system, not take out COBRA, but to have the option to pay their premiums. As Mr. Slater said, it's much cheaper to go ahead and pay the county part of the premium and the individual part of the premium rather than go to COBRA.
COBRA's awful.
Right.
It's expensive.
And
Very expensive.
and so that's something, as we're talking about this, that's why this is coming up, to see, you know, if we need to put that into policy and
I think
go
that,
from there.
I think that there's a lot of discussion. I think this is where we talk about deferring to expertise. It's important for us to rely on Mr. Bennett here. We're not talking about employees that showed up tardy to school
Right.
54 times. We're talking about employees that are under investigation, either by law enforcement or by the Department of Children's Services. So we're stepping into areas that I think we need to take guidance from Mr. Bennett, and
I understand that.
I would ask him to help us
I guess
in this.
I hate to do this, but we're already way past time in our work session. So I think that what we're gonna have to do, to be respectful of the public and those that are trying to tune in on and watch us live, we need to adjourn our work session, and then what we're gonna do is come back with these items at the end of our regular meeting under board matters. And perhaps, Mr. Bennett, that you can speak to those other two items that are there as well, suspension, dismissal of tenured, non-tenured employees. Speak to all those items. That might be helpful. So what we're going to do, and again, I hate for us to do this, but we're already too far gone. We're going to end our work session, take just a brief break, and then come back and start our regular session. So our work session will stand adjourned.